the results of the study will indicate what the situation is.
Okay.
So the aims of it will be to try and contribute positively to the situation of jockeys in South Africa. So it'll be creating an understanding and an awareness of what they deal with, the stresses, and how they are trying to cope with them themselves at the moment.
Welcome to another edition of In the Box Seat with myself, Warren Lenferna, and Andrew Harrison, my regular co-host and good friend. And we've got another co-host and good friend. We won't say guest today because she's a colleague and she works with us and she works within the racing industry. So she is a guest, but she's more of a colleague and a good friend of Andrew's and mine and the racing industry. We're going to talk to Michelle Wing today. Are you happy with that introduction? She's a good friend and colleague.
Lengthy, but it's fine.
Lengthy, but it's
no,
fine.
well, Michelle, if no one knows you in racing now, then they will never know you. So,
Nice to have you on our show again. You have been with us on the In the Box Seat before, but it's nice to have you again, and we're going to talk about something new that's in the pipeline. Lovely to have you, Mish.
Oh, thank you, Warren. Lovely to be here. Always good to chat.
But see, we can't treat Michelle to a lovely breakfast at the Summerveld Clubhouse because normally we're at the Summerveld Clubhouse, as you know, as are you when you do all your interviews and
well,
things.
these are lazy bastards. They didn't want to go.
Well, they've been up there already once this week. I mean, the petrol's expensive to get backwards and forwards to Summerveld. But that's it. That's the team today. We're recording from Hollywood Bets Gravel. Thanks to our production team behind the scenes for all they do for us. But let's talk about Michelle Wing and why she's here. But before we do that, how's things going? I saw on Facebook this morning you've just done a fantastic insert. It was about 4 minutes long on a mare called Louisiana foaling at Maritzfontein. Wow.
Quite beautiful, Warren. And you know, to witness a mare foaling down, it's the miracle of life. It's new life that comes into the world. And being a mother myself, whether it's a human life or animal life, and in this case a horse, you just filled with a sense of awe and wonderment when these little foals are foaled down. It was quite magical to be a part of and witness, and the reason for going was actually to see Summer Pudding. I got a call to say that Summer Pudding was just about ready to fall down, and I was fortunate enough just before my flight left on the last day to catch her. So that's going to be something we'll be putting together. She was actually in a paddock, Warren, with 3 other mares waiting to fall down. She was the first. So there was Gay Fortuna, who's the dam of Marinaresco and Marina, Mill Queen, who foaled last night, and then a mare who raced in the Eastern Cape, Sunshine Mint, a grey mare. So these 4 kind of bonded in the field, and I kind of bonded with them as well. So I'll be bringing that story of the 4 of them in the next week or so.
We look forward to that. But you know what's the most interesting thing? You talk about life and nature. 2 things I noticed, not only in that video, obviously we've all seen foals being born for some time, but the mother, the moment the foal is born, she goes and gives her baby a lick on the forehead or a lick on the cheek, or just to get that bond going. And the other thing is how quickly the foals stand up. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's within 5 to 10 minutes that they stand.
Although a little shakily, but they stand.
Yeah, but they're herd animals. I mean, if you go into the wild, you see giraffes being born and impala being born. They have to be up and running before the lions get them. Yeah,
yeah, that's also true. Yeah, that's also true.
Have
you seen a live foaling?
Yeah.
You have. Okay. Just off the subject question. You said your flights, because Maritzfontein is a lovely farm to go to.
Yes.
But they're not. When I say that they're not. It's quite. You've got to travel quite a bit to get there. How was your travel plan? Did you fly to Joburg? Did you fly to Blum?
Yes. No, flew to Joburg and then Joburg to Kimberley. But you can also go to Blum. There are flights from Blum, but it just worked out cost effective to go the route I did.
Okay, so you flew Joburg and then drove obviously Joburg. To
no,
Kimberley.
Flew again.
Oh,
it actually,
again.
when you work out car hire and that, depending on when you book and what deals they're on, it's not too bad to go that way.
Yeah. Amazing. Nowadays to fly, it's cheaper than driving somewhere, especially to Joburg with all the tolls and the cost of
I think I get a helicopter from Maritzburg to Durban. I might come to the races quite often.
But that's okay. So you did the 2-leg flight, okay, and then you landed at Kimberley, and then obviously fetched you at Kimberley Airport. Okay. So that's what we've got to look forward to. I just also wanted to ask you a couple of, yes, in the previous podcast, that you've been brought up with horses and your daughter jumps and does dressage and all the rest of it. But from the presenting perspective, from getting behind the microphone and hosting and interviewing, and how did that come about?
Actually through Andrew Bond and then through Martin Locke. I was writing for Parade magazine. You remember Charles Fall had Parade magazine, and I was studying at university at the time and doing some writing for Charles, and Andrew got hold of me to say, you write well, wouldn't you like to try your hand at broadcast? And I said no, actually, but one thing led to another, and I did, and got introduced to Martin, and Martin basically brought Dee's and I into the game roughly at the same time and trained the both of us, and that's how it got going.
Jeez, that's interesting. Martin, he was here at the Hollywood Bets Durban, and I was lovely.
Same white jacket, yeah.
Same white jacket, yeah. Martin Locke, he taught a lot of us, and he certainly he was a good presenter. I say was because obviously he's not presenting anymore. But okay, that's interesting. Now let us talk about, and you also, but you say write well, and you also write well, but you've also got to be able to, if you're in broadcast, and I say this with the greatest respect, you listen to various radio stations. And some of the way they pronounce words, I don't know. I'm told it's okay to say Twitter. I thought it was Twitter.
It's X now.
What is it? Oh, is it X?
X, yes, okay. That's right.
And the Spaghetti Junction, they call it the Spaghetti. No D, Spaghetti Junction. And when when we're all in broadcast, and you will do that when you read articles.
Like education, yeah.
Yeah,
education.
So it's interesting, and merit ratings.
Yeah.
Instead of merit ratings, So it's just interesting. You listen to different speeches and different things. More importantly, you are currently doing a dissertation or a study or something. A dissertation is the right word.
That's correct,
told me. A dissertation on the stresses and coping strategies in South African jockeys.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know anything about it. That's why we've got you on the show, and I'm sure that our viewers don't know too much about it either. But when you link words together like stresses, coping, jockeys, well, when you hear how some of them get abused in the chute going past and all the rest of it, and when they've ridden a odds-on favourite to the best of their ability, and it's just got beaten an absolute whisker, and you come back and you're getting hurled abuse at, it can't be easy. So is that sort of basically something that would fall into that category?
It's part of what will fall into that category. Basically, being a jockey in horse racing, it's tough and it's high risk, and jockeys have to manage a number of different factors or stresses in order to be successful, not the least of which is their weight. And I think this has been well documented in a number of published studies already. But to have to manage, particularly for those jockeys who are slightly heavier, to have to manage their diet on a regular basis.
And
Bernard Fadeherb is one case in point, Donovan Dillon was another. Or take a ride on a horse that's coming in well weighted in a race, and they have to waste in order to get to that weight, actually has negative effects on them physically, mentally, and emotionally in terms of their alertness. So that's one aspect, but it's also, it's high risk in that it's well documented that racing is prone to injury. Injuries are high. That's nothing new. When you bear in mind that a jockey is 1/8 of the weight of a horse that he is or she is then directing, and that jockey's success is dependent on the performance of that horse. The two come together, athlete and horse come together, which researchers call the horse or the human-animal dyad. So it's a very unique sport where, it's human and animal that come together in pursuit of performance excellence. But it's also, dare I say it, an extreme sport. It ranks up there with some of the most extreme sports around, because you're not only in the race on your own, you're in a field of other horses. So an error in judgment on a jockey's part, or a particular jockey or another jockey, or if a horse shifts, doesn't only have implications for that horse and jockey, but for the rest of the field.
Yeah, sure.
But, sorry, Andrew.
No, you jumped the gun here. Michelle, what are you're a clinical psychologist?
No, I'm not a clinical psychologist yet.
Yet.
Yes, this is a
But
master's.
It's a master's.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's.
So this is being done.
So we need to get into Michelle's head before you start talking about.
Well, there's no rush for the podcast. I just wanted to explain what we're doing.
Start at the beginning and not start at the end and go forward, going backwards.
But tell us, because I was going to ask you the question, why are you getting involved in this? And I suppose it would lead to, part of your profession, your studies.
Well, it's part of a master's that I'm doing in psychology, clinical psychology, through the University of Brunel in London. It's one of the bigger universities in London. A research university, and also accredited to the British Psychological Society. So the degrees that you come out with are recognized internationally. Not all degrees in the UK in psychology are, but this is. So the level of education or degree that you come out with then is slightly higher. And this has been an interest of mine through perhaps media and being witness to racing and jockeys, what they actually go through and what I see them going through, and the lack or dearth of research that there is in the industry regarding jockeys. Be that as it may, as I said, there's quite a lot that's available on weight and the implications of managing weight in jockeys, but not stresses and coping strategies. So this is kind of breaking new ground in this whole field.
Because I noticed with jockey, riding horses in races is more dangerous than Formula One.
Well, somebody was saying that this is the only sport that you get followed meter by meter with an ambulance.
Yes.
They don't follow, an ambulance doesn't follow you.
No, but Formula One, I've watched, horrific crashes.
Yeah.
The flames and crash into the barrier, and the bloke jumps out and goes, it's fine. If you did that on a racehorse, you'd be dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but it's dangerous. It is
No,
dangerous.
it is a dangerous sport, but there's something about the thrill of being involved in an extreme sport that attracts people and attracts a following. Look at that Formula One program. What is it? Driving to Survive.
Drive to Survive, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to know much about Formula One to watch it, but it's thrilling to watch. But what research has revealed to date, that there are basically kind of 4 reasons why jockeys are attracted to getting involved in racing and why they remain there. And one is this horse-human dyad that I mentioned to you. You'll speak to most jockeys, they feel a rapport with their horses. There's got to be some kind of connection or passion for them wanting to partner with an animal in a sport like this. Secondly, it's the fame that's involved. It is kind of elitist, perhaps. They put on a pedestal, like other sportsmen are, but it also happens in racing. It's the money. From quite a young age, they start to earn, particularly the successful jockeys, even before they're licensed. If they're riding in graded races and being successful, they are earning more money than what their counterparts are who have gone into business or still studying at varsity.
But I think you'd find also that 90% of the jockeys come from almost disadvantaged backgrounds.
They do.
So the attraction is there.
Yeah, the attraction.
Yes, and the last factor is just the thrill of the race. And I think as a country too, we generally quite courageous, achievement-driven people across our different cultures, and we love that. And so it's the excitement of it. So that's what research has found to date. It's basically those 4 things in terms of what attracts and keeps jockeys in horse racing.
It's obviously a chosen career. There may be 1 or 2 that were forced into being a jockey. Maybe their mom and dad said, you will be a rider, you will be, maybe, probably, maybe not. But what I'm saying is most of it and most jobs is your own choice. If you want to become a surgeon, it's your choice. If you want to become a professional stuntman or stuntwoman, it's your choice. So yes, although we respect the fact that it's a hellishly dangerous sport, etc., it's their chosen career.
But you've also got the Jockey
that.
Academy that weeds you out.
Yes.
If you can't take it, then you root.
Correct.
Simple as that.
But
once you get through the academy and through that apprenticeship, it's up to you to. But then you started looking at lifestyle. Where are you going to? Where's your money going? You can go way off the tracks.
You can. We're one of the few countries in the world, as we all know, where we have an academy to start and nurture the skill of young jockeys. And it's a great service that is offered, but it's very apparent that when you come out of that support structure, although you could fall back on it, it's not as readily available, and you need to forge your own way. And this is when things get tricky. A study was done on jockeys, the stresses jockeys experience in 2017 in Australia by a group of people led by Landolt, and they focused only on apprentices, and they typically found stresses relating to apprentices being the radical change in lifestyle. You know, you come out of civilian life, you go to become an apprentice jockey, and it's the workload, the very long days, the lack of autonomy, because you no longer have time on your own. The cognitive demands, where you have to concentrate multiple number of times, but for small periods. So whether you're track riding and getting on and work riding horses, and we know that jockeys and work riders today can ride up to 20 horses a morning. So 20 times you're having to get your adrenaline up to speed again, to focus to work that horse. Or on race day, our popular jockeys are riding up to 8 races on a program. So you're having to raise your adrenaline to focus to ride, and it's not only making sure the horse is positioned correctly. A lot of tactics are involved, so you have to be mentally and physically alert. And then you drop down again and you raise it again for the next race. It can be a roller coaster, and that takes a lot of mental and emotional skill and toughness and resilience.
That's a darn good point. I never thought of something like that. You're quite right, because although they're focused and sharp in the parade ring with owners, etc., but it's in the race where it's the most important. And as you say, the adrenaline pumps and you've got to switch off. You've got to start it again and switch off 8 times. But no wonder they're exhausted at the end of the day.
I wonder why we're so poor at the end of the day too.
Miss, were you so your studies and your was that what you were always doing when you sort of left school, or was it something that you started or recently, or did it stop because you were getting involved with horses, or how did you marry the two?
So I came out of school and did a university undergrad, and then did an honours in industrial psychology, and I thought I'd go on and finish my degree and a master's and perhaps go on. And I got offered a job with Unilever, and they had such a good management recruitment scheme that I took it. Okay. And life kind of led me down that path with the intention that I'd always come back. I've kind of come from a scholastic family, both my parents and my siblings, so this is something I've always thought I would do. But as I've got older, I've thought I've really wanted to do something that would contribute to a field that I know something in. And as I was mentioning earlier, being involved in racing and having the privilege to interview people, get up close to some of these wonderful horses, but I've also seen the stress and the strain that it places not only on jockeys in the industry, also the trainers, but particularly the jockeys. And when I started doing some reading and research, I just realized there was such a need. And I got in contact with a professor in Ireland, Lewis King, who has the support of the Irish Horse Racing Authority, and he was the most recent study on stresses in 2021. So he took that original work from Australia, ran it across the spectrum of ages and experience with jockeys in Ireland, and this work that we are doing now is based on that. Okay. But he only looked at stresses. Part of the whole stress process is the coping strategies, and that's perhaps more important. As he was even saying, stresses are one thing, but how somebody then copes with those stresses to not impact their performance negatively is perhaps where the attention should be. So this study is the first of its kind amongst jockeys to look at the whole process. And based on what comes out of this, it'll be fed back to Lewis King in Ireland and Landolt in Australia, and we'll see where we go, and we can perhaps take it even further.
Were you approached to do this, or was it something that did they approach you, or was it something that you just thought of? I mean, why you? How did you hear about it?
I started doing some reading and research, and I started asking questions. And in fact, before I started my master's, I knew of Lewis King and the work he was doing, and I got in contact with him. And one thing has just led to another, and I thought, well, here's a perfect opportunity in my master's we need to do a dissertation. I'm going to do this in a field where I perceive that there is a need.
Yes.
And let's see if we can't contribute positively to a field in South African horse racing.
I did see in the documents, etc., that it's very much a confidential.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you'll obviously know who the jockeys are, but it's confidential. You know, when results get posted, it probably, you know, it won't be with the people's names, etc. It's very confidential. Have you elaborate on that, and have you had anybody come forward as yet?
To answer your first question, yes, it's completely anonymous and confidential. Obviously, I know who I'm interviewing or who's speaking to me. Sure. That is audio recorded, and within a week of that having been done and transcribed, that audio recording is deleted, and a pseudonym is assigned to that person. So that person doesn't then is not recognized by his own or her own name. It's a pseudonym, and as a researcher, all we are concerned about is a data set. So it could be Joe Bloggs or Jim Brown, that data set. And it's not spoken about again after the interview with that jockey. That is not the purpose of it, unless that person wants to raise something with me again. It's not spoken about. Also, to gain approval to run research like this, it has to pass through a really stringent ethics committee at Brunel University, which took us about 6 weeks to get this research or any research approved. It's not just something I feel like doing this research. Their reputation and name and credibility is at stake, and we've got to uphold certain, in fact a lot, of standards and requirements from their side, because they endorse what we do. So that's that. In terms of people coming forward, yeah, we've had a really good response. We've already started interviewing, and we've even had interest.
News. So you're still looking for more?
We're still looking for more. So we're looking for, this is qualitative research. So it's not questionnaires or anything. Qualitative research is semi-structured interviews, and those questions are based on previous research, those 2 studies that I have mentioned. So what I put to the jockeys is based on what has come out of that previous research, and they're given sight of those questions ahead of time just to perhaps think about it. But yeah, it's then collated from there afterwards, and what we try and do and will do is identify common themes amongst these different data sets that we get and compare against the results from Australia and Ireland, and whether anything different also manifests. So they're interested whether the stresses that South African jockeys experience are different to what is experienced in Ireland or Australia. But yes, Andrew, we're looking for 10 to 15 jockeys. Bearing in mind we only have about 80 that are competitive in the country. It's quite a large percentage.
So it can be South Africa, any South African jockey can approach you?
Yeah, any South African jockey. And we've had approaches from around the country and somebody who's based internationally as well already. Sure. So, but we are looking for more. And the quality and the success of this will depend on people actually coming forward and sharing what they feel comfortable to share, so that we can put this all together to go into an international sort of pool of information.
Yeah, I think it's important that they know that there's no names.
No names
at
all.
Yes, absolutely, because but it's obviously then maybe a stupid question. So it can't, if you get 3 names, 3 jockeys, you can't really do it. Or I suppose you could, but the more the better, because you can, you need as much data as possible. Is that basically how?
Yeah, the minimum is 10.
Okay, so there is a minimum.
But
you need
yeah,
10.
yeah,
okay.
At least 10, and we're already halfway there.
Okay.
But we're looking for about 15 to really add a depth of understanding and richness to the data.
Okay, well, I mean, with no disrespect, it needs to. It is confidential, because if you go and see a psychologist or you go and see a sports therapist or whatever, there's a law you sign. If I go to if you're my psychologist, but can you imagine?
I'd love to be your psychologist.
Can you imagine? If you're my psychologist and I go and have an appointment with you and I say that I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about jumping off a cliff, and you go and tell all your friends at the local bar, I'll have you sued, let me tell you.
So one wants to jump, should we push him?
So yeah, it needs to be, that's an important message to give across, that it's completely confidential, etc. But it's such a wonderful thing, because I've been banging on the drum for a long time now. We as the racing industry need to get more behind the scenes out there to the public, whether it be the breeding scenes, the psychology scenes, the difficulties, the highs, the lows, the man who makes the best curry at Hollywood Bets Gravel in the Durban View Room, all the farriers, all the ups and downs from behind the scenes, and the jockey that rides his first winner, the pain and suffering that he's had to go through to get there. That's we need to give out to the racing public, because I find, and I was reading on an article on the Sporting Post somewhere, something I haven't read it properly, about keyboard warriors, and people are quick to lash out without having any idea of what that person's gone through or going through. You know, whether you're a journalist, you're a tipster, you're a caterer, you're a jockey, whatever you may be, trainer, and they're just quick to insult and just be ugly to people.
Yeah, well,
and it can make the recovery even more difficult.
Yeah, but it's easy to sit there behind your typewriter or laptop or whatever and just write, because you've done your cash. You know,
But there needs to be a consequence. There needs to be a consequence.
Yeah,
You can't do that.
I had a bloke yesterday said, I've been trying to mentor him and try and explain the things of racing, and he was saying this oak's a crook and that oak's a crook and this oak's riding badly. I said to him, listen, you're talking out of your pocket.
He wouldn't have liked that.
No, I did tell him that. I said, you're talking out of your pocket. I said, just chill and come back and talk to me tomorrow and think logically. Not all crooks.
Yeah, Warren, if I can just say, in my role here, I'm a researcher. So I'm not here as a psychologist for the people who come forward, the jockeys who come forward to share their stories with me. It's to document those stories. There's no comment or judgment or anything on that. I'm here to collect a data set that we can then use with all the others that come in to try and understand the phenomenon among South African jockeys.
So that's great. So you collect all the data, you collect everything, but then those guys and girls that have come to you, you collect all the data, etc. That's obviously a problem. Now that you're carrying issues and they obviously want it to be fixed. So then, do you take that data? Would you refer them to a psychologist or refer them to a sports? How do you fix it?
Well,
it's not up to you to fix it.
No, I'm asking.
If you take a step back, the results of the study will indicate what the situation is.
Okay.
So the aims of it will be to try and contribute positively to the situation of jockeys in South Africa. So it'll be creating an understanding and an awareness of what they deal with, the stresses, and how they are trying to cope with them themselves at the moment. That information will then be shared with the racing operators and also the National Horse Racing Authority, who have got behind this research as well. Then also the practitioners who support jockeys, whether they physical practitioners, physiotherapists, sports psychologists, all this information can feed in to offer jockeys a better service and a better support or backup should they need it. It's to make it available to them should they want it. So that is what the main direction of this research is. As much from an academic perspective, it's also practical to try and assist and help.
And it's obviously, you're focusing on jockeys because that's the sportsmen and sportswomen.
Yeah, jockeys.
I mean, if a trainer came to you, this study is for the jockeys, the sportsmen and the sportswomen that ride horses.
Yes, so Lewis King, the professor in Ireland, has recently done something with trainers as well, because he was approached by trainers to say, well, it's not only the jockeys who are under pressure and have stresses to handle, it's also us trainers. And interesting.
Well, there's your doctorate.
Interestingly, I've had a trainer already in South Africa come to me and say, well, what about us? Are you aware of what we go through? And I said, yeah, I am to a certain degree, you know, being around the stables and just seeing the balls that they juggle, you know, managing expectations from owners, from breeders, the jockeys, doing right by the horse, the long hours, the workload. There's a lot. So this is just the start of something. So it is exciting.
But I think in every industry, I'm not drawing on the table. Who let this man in here? Or did you allow him in here? Your security allows anybody in. I'm not drawing on the table. So if any industry, yes, if it's a hospitality industry, racing industry, soccer industry, I think everybody has got, yes, we're focusing on jockeys, trainers, but everybody has their stresses. No matter
Yeah.
if you're the CEO, you've got your stresses and anxieties. If you're the caterer, you've got to make sure you're catering for the right amount of people. But what I believe, going back to that somebody saying on social media, you know, talking about keyboard warriors, freedom of speech, and somebody said, well, actually not. There's a bit of a difference between freedom of speech and defamation. There's a huge difference with that. You know, freedom of speech and defamation, you've got to understand those are two different things. But also, us as the human race, for goodness sake, we don't cut in each other enough slack. You know, everybody is somebody's daughter or somebody's son, somebody's mother or somebody's father, and carrying their own troubles. So when you've got a chap at the races that walks past you, maybe you presented, and said, you're a bloody useless, your tips are shocking, you know, you're not a slab of concrete standing there. She's a human being. If somebody sends you a message and says your article was up the poll and they're just being what's the word?
Defamatory.
Defamatory. It's not right. It's not nice. It's ugly and unkind. If somebody's hurling abuse, there was an article, not an article, a big poster, and well done to GoldCircle for putting it there in track and ball. I don't know if you saw it at the where the shoot is. There's a big sign there that says any abusive language towards the jockeys, male or female, will be dealt with seriously, and quite right, because those are human beings. You know, if you can't take the heat in the kitchen, then step back. But those are human beings that have also got emotions, that have also got feelings.
But I mean, if you want to, that's part of the stresses of being a jockey. You're going to be abused because blokes have done their cash.
Yeah, correct. But there's a way of there's a way of, you know.
Yeah, I know. But whether the bad race or a good race, or the horse was just hopeless, you're still going to get abused.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, there's a way of, you know, be nice when you're being abused. You know, be nice when you say, speak nicely is what I'm saying. Don't.
I've survived 40 years being abused, so it's fun.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's one of the unique things about, just a last comment, it's one of the unique things about being a jockey is that you are dealing with so many expectations from people when you get on that horse.
Yes.
Again, it's the trainer, it's the owner, it's the punters particularly. You have the responsibility in a way of those punters' bets on you to ride the best race that you can. And it does weigh on jockeys' shoulders. That it's not many other sports have it. There is sports betting, but this is very individual and very personal when a punter is betting on you on that particular horse.
Interesting story, and I'm going to mention no names because there's no need to mention the names, but to admit error. Some do admit error, some don't, some look to make excuses, some put their hands up and say. But a couple of weeks back, a particular horse ran here at Hollywood Bets Gravel, and I happened to go and stand in the area where the horse got, ran third, I think. The jockey came back. Before the trainer could open his mouth, he said, that was probably one of the worst rides I've ever delivered. So immediately, you say, okay, I understand, mistakes happen. The horse ran about 2 or 3 meetings back, or a meeting or two back, with a different jockey on, because this particular jockey that admitted his error was not available. He was offered the ride, but not available. Horse ran not a place, probably way back. So what was it? Was it? Now what do you say? So now you've got that day where it was a bad ride by the rider's admission. Then the horse runs again and runs not so great. You're dealing with live animals. You're dealing with situations that change from day to day. So, you can't turn around and say, no, well, it's livestock, live animals, live human beings. Next week, the horse might win by 6 lengths.
I hope it wasn't a dead human being. Maybe right.
So it's so unpredictable because things can change from moment to moment. A horse can get on a float at Summerfeld, as right as rain, arrive 45 minutes later here at the race course and be scratched. Things can change quickly. What is that saying? They can spoil overnight. They're like strawberries. They can spoil overnight. So all those factors have to be, thought about. It's not just you're a bad person. There's factors involved.
Ideally, you don't like to see a huge difference in a horse's form.
Sure.
If one jockey is on one day and another jockey is on another day, and if there is a difference, there needs to be an explanation. But ideally, all things considered, there shouldn't be radical changes in form. Hopefully.
But also, getting back to the pressure of jockeys, I know you haven't got anybody from America.
No.
Because I know I've read in the old days, I mean, those jockeys to keep their weight down, they'd eat and then they'd bring it all up, and then they've all got false teeth because the stomach acids would eat away all their teeth.
Yeah.
Just to keep their weight down.
Yeah.
What is that?
So that's one of the
disease,
stresses.
bulimia, isn't it?
Bulimia,
Bulimia,
it's really a unique sport in terms of what our athletes as jockeys go through, because that's detrimental to your health, not just physically but also mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
I mean, you see them. Sometimes you see a jockey sucking on a piece of ice, and that's all. They're just having a bit of liquid just to keep their.
Well, you think of it this way: you come to your performance day, like if you're a rugby player, you're playing for the Springboks. You have to be supremely fit on the day to play at that kind of level. You're a jockey, you come to a race day, and if you're riding in 8 races and you've had to manage your weight, you now have to give 8 supreme efforts whilst maybe only sipping on water and having the minimal amount of food to eat between racing. It's arduous. It's a really tough game to keep the balance and really be competitive.
Yeah.
And then you're
Getting abused on top
getting
of it.
abused on top of it. Yeah, and it's tough. It really is tough. Now, last question before we wrap up. Just refresh my memory. Donovan Dillon had to sweat. Which horse was it for? Rainbow Bridge.
Yes.
Golden Ducat.
Oh, no,
Golden
Ducat.
Yes.
Now that's a lovely story, not a lovely story, but an interesting story how he had to sweat, and then Golden Ducat ran such a good race, and then he won the Group 1 after that.
Yes, the Champions Cup.
So, but I mean, that's a positive result, a positive end result. It can happen where you put all that effort in and the horse doesn't perform on the day. So, can you imagine how I can't remember the words today. What's the matter with me? There's nothing wrong with my memory.
Deflated.
Chris. Deflated, thank you. Can you imagine how deflated they must feel afterwards when you've put in all this work, blood, sweat and tears, and you go and ride the horse and run second to last? Can you imagine how dreadful that must be?
Well, I suppose the best story in South African racing about blokes losing weight is Garth Polo when he rode Bush Telegraph in the July.
Brown rice and apples or
rice
something.
and stewed apples, yeah.
And he ate that every day, forever, for weeks and weeks.
To lose the weight,
That would actually be to chat to him about. One day we must look at actually maybe doing a podcast with about. I'm going to make a note of that about the diet, the dieting of jockeys. And speak to guys that have sweated.
Yeah, Gavin Lorena had to also waste to ride Comedy Ding and won the July.
Yeah.
It's these are the things that you're quite right. The public need to know about. But I think that's pretty much it. Is there a deadline for this? Is there a deadline for this? I mean,
all the interviews need to take place by the end of October, which sounds like a long time away, but it's not.
I've started my Christmas shopping already. What do you mean? We need Christmas time.
And then this is all handed in first week of January.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got lots of
pressure.
You're on your own. You're doing this on your own.
Yeah, doing it on my own. If we take this further next year, depending on the results, it might be done in collaboration with others. I'm hoping so. I think there's a wealth of knowledge here amongst our jockeys in this country that we can add and make a significant contribution to the understanding of the role of jockeys and the career of jockeys internationally.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's the thing. So you should get a masters in jockeys, get a PhD in trainers,
yes,
and professor of the loonies in the office.
Professor of the loonies in the office. Yeah, we could contribute to her studies. But just will you let us know when we have to call you Dr. Wing?
That is a long time still.
No, Michelle wouldn't want to be called Dr. Wing. She's one of the team in the office, and she's just as loony as we are. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Just tell everybody what it's like working in the publishing office.
I don't think anyone would believe us, but I can tell you that when racing's on the go and Warren's in the office with Devon and Andrew's there egging them on, the roof comes off. If you ever want to bottle enthusiasm for racing, just stop by the media center on a race day. Come visit us. We'll make you a cup of coffee and you can enjoy the excitement.
You can enjoy the show. Absolutely. Anyway, but Mitch, well, thank you for all that you're putting into it and your time and energy and your clearly it's a love and a passion for it. So we're going to, will you be able to along the line give us sort of an update? I mean, not on people's issues, but would you be able to give us an update in months to come?
Absolutely. I can just tell you, how it's progressing.
Yes.
I won't be able to share what the results are until sort of towards the end of the year, once all the analysis is done.
What would be interesting, sorry to interrupt you, what would be interesting to know is, maybe these 4 factors are the most raised factors, not who belongs to the factors, but anxiety, depression, to know what's the biggest sufferer out there.
I wouldn't know who those factors belong to, because by the time you've done 10 or 15 interviews and pseudonyms have been ascribed, you're basically just interested in the integrity of the data, and you're not thinking of the individuals whatsoever. And that also feeds into the anonymity of the whole project. But yes, I can keep you updated, and perhaps those people, jockeys out there who are still interested in getting involved, we can put my Brunel University email address, which they can contact me through on, and I can send relevant information for people to have a look at. Of
there
this
we go,
podcast.
The boys and the team are nodding their thumbs up, they know what to do. But now, technology is a funny thing. Are you telling me, so Brunel's got an email address for you?
Yes.
They're based where? In Ireland?
London.
In London?
Yes.
That's where their servers and things will be.
Yes.
So somebody from South Africa is going to email the address, is going to go to the server in London and then come back to you in South Africa. Technology, isn't it unbelievable?
That is how technology has advanced. This whole degree has been online. So all the lectures happen on Zoom. It's incredibly structured and ordered now. It's as if you're sitting in a classroom. It's a virtual classroom. So you then also have opportunity to interact with your professors, one-on-one discussions, team discussions, team groups. You're no way compromised for not being in a lecture theatre personally.
Is there a chance that you could go overseas? I mean, would they maybe want to see you? Or
it would depend on the results of the study. And we just take it one step at a time. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but we'll just see how it goes.
But will you let us know when we must call you Dr. Wing? All right, maybe we should entitle this podcast "On a Wing and a Prayer" or something like that for Dr. Wing. But before we wrap up, have you read this? Have you read it?
No, Dr. Wing has read this.
Have you read it?
Yes, I have.
Michelle's going to write the review for us. Michael Carr, everybody knows Michael Carr from Parade Magazine and also in Cape Town. He used to be our Cape Town correspondent. Mish, good read?
Very good read. I think move over Dick Francis. Here we have Michael Clower. It's a book that I couldn't put down. He has you from the first page, and from then on to the end, it was just how soon can I get to find out actually what happened at the end.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Did you hear that joke?
Okay, Michael, send the cash this way.
Did you hear that joke? I read a book about glue and Velcro. It was so good I just couldn't put it down. It was probably one of the best jokes I've ever heard in my life. And what was the other one? I went to the CNA and I saw there was a book on how to make decisions. I couldn't decide whether I should buy it or not.
Oh no.
Stitched up.
Oh yeah, stitched up.
Those are shocking. Those are bad. They call them bad. The teenagers call them of nowadays bad to dad jokes or something like that. There we go, stitched up Michael Cloud. But racing.
You can buy it on Amazon.
What's happening this week? Of course, we've got a podcast that's coming out. Well, I think it's just come out on Clifton Stud, Peter and Jenny Blythe. Obviously, this will be our next one with Michelle. Then there's a good couple of podcasts we've got in the pipeline. Friday night is the Racing Awards, KwaZulu-Natal Racing Awards on Friday night. Then, of course, next week is the Equus Awards up in Gauteng, and the sales. So there's plenty of action.
I was going through the 2-year-old sale catalogue. It looks really strong.
Yeah. So there's plenty of action. But that's a wrap from the three of us. Michelle Wing, Dr. Michelle Wing, soon to be. Andrew Harrison, my bushy head friend, and myself, Warren Lenferna. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you once again. Thank you to Senzo and to the whole team, to Wanda and the Piwe and everybody behind the scenes for their hard work. Really, we work with a top quality team. We're quite lucky. They make our job so much easier. But to you, the public, thank you for all your support. And stay safe, you and your families. And we'll see you, as always. Where we will see them?
In the second box, if you're Duncan.
We'll see you in the number 1 box. Thank you for watching this week's episode of In the Box Seat podcast right until the very end. And we hope that you enjoyed it, because we certainly did. If you missed last week's podcast, In the Box Seat podcast with Andrew and myself, please go and watch it here. And last week's episode will be right there for you to go and enjoy and watch, as we know you will certainly enjoy In the Box Seat podcast from last week.